Welcome back to the Musician's Mindset. This is Dean here, and we are still whittling away, as it were, on that foundation for confidence. So, I want to talk about the next concept that for me was a game changer. All of these are game changers, really, and they all have been for me and others. This is known as what I call the musical dream scale. It's not how I learned it, but that's what I call it because we're talking about music here. So this is simply why versus how. I'm going to put up a little graphic here on the screen for you so you can see what I'm talking about. And you'll notice on this image that the why ball is much larger and heavier than the how ball. Now, I know this probably flies in the face of a lot of coaches out there and whatnot who say, you know, action, action, action. That's how you do it. You just got to get going. You just got to get busy and take as much action as possible. However, when you get stuck up on the how of doing the action, which happens, that's a real impediment to any progress. But if you've got your why down, the how kind of reveals itself. I want to go into that and dive into it just a little bit deeper here. Before I do, I just want to read a little excerpt from my book again in this section. In the world of business, it is almost expected that the business plan, which often takes so much time and energy to create, never goes as planned. This is a critical concept to understand for many reasons. First and foremost, especially when it comes to music, is that focusing on the how of getting your music out there can lead to zero progress because you will not be able to see the how initially. Again, initially. That gets revealed over time. But if you just focus on how you're going to do it, you're not going to make progress. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, before I had my first record out, Delphinium, I was, shall we say, suffering from this very malady of focusing on the how, because I was working a couple of jobs. I had taken on a financial obligation in a neighboring state on a family cabin that had to be rebuilt from the ground up. And I had an apartment over in Minnesota that I had to pay for, and suddenly I had this financial pressure and obligation to manage all of that. And I couldn't see how I was going to finish writing a record. I had a few songs done, but I didn't have a whole record finished. I couldn't see how I was going to find the time to record the record. I couldn't see how I was going to afford the record. I couldn't see how I was going to go out and play shows and do any kind of a tour in support of the record once it was done. So I was focused on how. And as a result, I had nothing. I didn't have a record. I didn't have all the songs for a record. So fortunately at this time is when I started to learn this concept about the balance scale. And I call it the dream scale, the musical dream scale. And I realized as I learned this that I was stuck on the how and that I should put more of my focus and attention on the why. And as a matter of fact, 90% of your focus should be on why and only 10% on the how. And that really flew in the face of everything else I had learned, because a lot of coaches out there, a lot of gurus in the personal development space talk about action, just massive action. You need to take massive action. And it's true, you do. However, if your thinking is off and you don't have your why down for doing what you're doing, any actions you take will not produce the results you desire. It'll feel like work and a struggle, and it's not sustainable as a result. And you will burn out real quick like. But if you get your why in place first, and then allow the actions to kind of reveal themselves, it's a much more elegant, flowing state to be in. It just works. It's almost magic. It's amazing how it works. It takes practice to focus only on why. You're automatically going to want to switch over to how. It happens just like that. So there are ways to keep focused on the why. I'll share those, obviously. I'm going to share those with you in this. But let's talk a little bit more about the why and versus how. Your why is basically, and I'm just going to read again from the book here. Those words and the concepts listed below the why ball are attitude, dreams, goals, objectives, purpose, vibrations, feelings, emotions, intentions, beliefs, motivation. And of course, the how is the action steps. But when you get your attitude right, and you've got your dream dialed in, and you know what you want, which we talked about earlier, and you've got some goals set down, and you have a purpose, and you've got a good vibration around your music. In other words, you feel good about what you're putting out. The how almost becomes irrelevant. It really doesn't matter at that point. You just know that it's gonna come out somehow, some way, shape, or form. So consider this and take a look at where you might be really just stuck and hung up on the how. Because if you can get off of that for a minute and focus more on your why, that how then becomes a natural progression of your why. And there's a lot of power behind having a good attitude and a good vibration and a good purpose. Why do you want to do this music? Why do you want to do the music?